You are ready. Recording in progress. Good morning. How are you today?
Good morning,
All right, guys, it's Coach Bronson and
Coach Nat.
Coach Natalie talking about some stuff that's kind of hot on our brains right now. I actually contacted Nat last night and I was like, hey, I want to talk about something. Let's discuss the last several weeks. I don't know. You tell me the last, because you were like, you like didn't hesitate when I said, when I called you yesterday. I was like, hey, so I feel like the last few weeks, my posts have really been all about being strict and on point and never going off plan. And like, I feel like I've been really harping on this. And you're like, yep, like you no hesitation at all. So I'm guessing that I was sensing that's kind of where I've been lately, right? And basically, there's a lot of stuff that goes into my message over the past few weeks, I guess month and a half, 2 months. And that is for me personally, my journey and what I'm going through in trying to have a very specific goal, get to a body composition, get to a certain point of the experiments that I'm doing with Rob, high fat, trying to cut, trying to maintain muscle mass and all those things, right? So I'm going through a bodybuilding type prep for a competition, even though I'm not doing a competition. So it's very strict, it's very regimented, tracking everything, being very deliberate and intentional about what I'm trying to do. So that's kind of where my mindset is. At the same time, there's another level of that, which we can talk about, but when it comes to other people looking at what they're doing and where they're going, what their goals are trying to be. So you've been through the prep thing, right? And what is that, just from your experience? You said something last night that was interesting. You were saying that anybody that's been through a prep, when you hear other people making excuses or talking about how hard it is, you're kind of like, yep, I know, but you can do it. Like you had a whole take on that. What's your take on the idea of being strict all the time?
Yeah, so first of all, Bronson doesn't think he's going to do a show, but that remains to be
I'll
seen.
do a show in front of the mirror at the gym. How's that?
We're working on that. I
Could
still believe that when he gets to the level of body fat that he's talking about getting to, that he's never been at before, he's going to want to get on stage, because this is just what happens when you've put in all this work for all this time. You've gotten your body to a level where you've never seen it before.
you want to
And
show it off?
it's like, I did all the work anyway.
Well, let's do
Why
it. Okay.
not?
Does it have to be a show? What if we do like a photo shoot?
I mean, absolutely. Photo shoot should be done, period.
If you're like
Like,
photo shoot, show, do whatever, right? All of
period. Like, if you're doing a show, you better do at least one photo shoot. Like,
it.
competitor putting in all that work, you better do all the photo shoots. Like,
All
do
the
all
photo
the
shoots.
things. Like, you have worked harder than you've ever worked in your life before to get here. And this is what I was getting at last night was, I know a lot of people who have competed for the first time. They do it to see if they're capable of doing it. It's like this
Mhm.
bucket list item, or this, like, I've always had this in the back of my mind, like maybe I could do it, but I don't know if I really could do it. And it's a goal that is so far off in the distance for most people, incomprehensible, but it
Yeah.
becomes this thing of, if I can do this, I don't even know how I'm going to feel. Like, it's just going to take me to a whole different level in my life. And this is what I was getting at last night is, and listen, I've been in all the stages before. I've been in it's not worth it to me to put in the work. So I need to just relax for a period of time. And I've been in those sprints, like what Coach Bronson's in right now. He's in a sprint.
The long
It's
sprint.
it's but the terms, it's really, it's a marathon, but in truth it's a sprint, because the way that you go into a sprint is different from the way you go into a marathon. The way you go into a marathon is, I've got to pace myself. I know it's going to take a while, so I need to build in all of these breaks and all of these, I need to make sure I pace it so that I don't run out of steam at the end. A sprint is by all means necessary. Anything I need to do, I'm getting to the end of this thing. And that is the mindset of a competitor. And that is where I've seen the shift happen, and I felt it in myself from going from not being in that place, not ever having taken yourself so far, so hard, putting everything on the line, making a goal so big that not even necessarily so big, but just such a big shift, a goal that requires such a shift in who you are and how you operate,
Yeah.
that there is absolutely no, I call them non-negotiables, right? It's like the way that I go into a prep is, well, here we go. Whether it's a 4-week, take it to the stage real quick, which I did last year kind of prep, or whether it's a 16-week or a 24, which I've done all of those.
Mhm.
Prep time is a shift. It's like a switch flips. You went from making all the excuses, and I hate to even use that term because it has such a negative connotation and it can put people on the defensive real easily. Like, I'm not making excuses. This shit is just hard. Sorry, can I curse on here?
Hey, whatever.
Uh,
Do you, boo?
um, because saying excuses does not mean that I'm acting like this stuff is not hard. It
Right.
is. It is, and I think it's very important for anyone embarking on a real serious transformational change to acknowledge how hard this is about to be. Because if we don't acknowledge that, we can find ourselves in the midst of it, and the difficulty of it will make us stop in our tracks and will make us turn around or sit down and just
And
fail and
that's
decide to just quit.
Yeah, and that's where I want to have this conversation, because I don't want people to think that I don't get that, right? In my message, like that I'm so hard and strict, and I'm just a hard ass about you can never make a mistake and you have to always be 100%. And if you're not perfect, it doesn't. No, that's not at all what I'm saying. I want everyone to be very cognizant of how hard it can be and
Yep.
all of the things that go into it. But I really, on the same side, I really want people to also understand and be in touch, like intimately in touch with why they're doing what they're doing. Where do they want to be? Who do they want to be? What is the lifestyle that they're looking for? Because that's the determination of the decisions that you have to make along the way, right?
Yes.
You have to make a decision. You've heard me talk about, we've talked about this, like you make a decision, the decision to do what you're going to do, and it should make the process easier because you don't have to make that decision again. You made the decision once, this is what I'm doing. Everything from there should be easier. We know it's not, right? There's temptation, there's things that come up along the way, but you've already made that base decision. So the more times you can make that decision or move in that direction again, the better, right? So
Mhm.
I don't expect anybody to always make the decision that's moving in one direction every time, right? But I want you to understand the consequences of either or decision. You can make Everyone can make the decision that they want to make based on where they're at, what they're going through, their determination of the consequences, what they're trying to do. I mean, there's so many different variables that go into it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to judge anybody on what decision they make.
Right.
Um, it's you have to, as an individual, say, hey, where do I want to go? How fast do I want to get there? What am I trying to do? Like all these things have to come into play. And that's what I'm talking about when I try to provide, you know, tips on how to, what questions to ask yourself, how important it is. So um, you brought up when we were talking last night the whole idea of the piggy bank thing. So
Yes.
what is that? And so I want to relate this to because the way that I look at it is from a health perspective. If I'm at a different place than a lot of people that I talk to. A lot of clients that I work with are at a place where they're trying to get healthy,
Mhm.
right? And the way that I look at it is the closer you get to health, the more flexibility and leeway you have with the choices that you make. Right. So I would say that I'm fairly healthy, metabolically healthy, strength wise, body composition wise, inflammation, like all the things about my health are pretty good. I'm insulin sensitive, good cholesterol, like all that stuff. I can make choices. That's what allows me to do what I'm doing now. Right. I'm doing an experiment now that is purely aesthetic, purely body composition, purely what can my body do beyond the normal?
Yep.
Where if I wasn't healthy, I wouldn't say that anyone should do what I'm doing right now, right?
Absolutely.
Health should be the
Absolutely.
priority.
Yeah.
So how does that relate? The idea of as you get healthier, you have more leeway. How does that relate to the piggy bank idea that you came up with last night?
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm just so glad that you're doing this topic because I think you're right. I think it can come off as, oh, he's making it sound like it should be easy for me. And yeah, the fact is, it's everybody's in a different place. You're coming at this from a different place. I'll tell you what, if your doctor told you that you wouldn't see your child's next birthday if you don't do something, I guarantee you'd be acting a little differently than you might be doing if you're like, oh, I just want to lose a few pounds,
Mhm.
or, I want to get healthier, which I think also is a very, like, arbitrary goals are not very helpful. So that could be a whole different topic for another time.
Mhm.
But let's acknowledge the fact that, okay, Bronson is in a place where he can do what he's doing now because he spent 4 years being strict with carnivore to get to the level of health that he's in now
Right.
to be able to pursue this next goal, right? Before I embarked on my first competition prep, I was 5 years in with a paleo diet that at the beginning, the whole goal was to heal myself because I was so sick. So, neither here nor there, but reconnect with your why. If you're really waffling all the time, if you find yourself every day battling with the decision, then you haven't made the decision yet. So, going back to what Bronson just mentioned about the decision, the one time decision, that's the difference between the sprint and the marathon. Like, even though it's all a marathon, when you can identify a why or a goal, a short term goal, a shorter term goal, let's say, or a more powerful focused why that you can focus on for those 16 weeks or that 6 months or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
that is going to drive what we're talking about here, these the daily decisions. And
Yes.
I heard a term the other day that was, the difference between a decision and a choice. And choices are what you make in the moment, but decisions are what you make in advance. So you've already made the decision,
Yeah.
like, this is the way I'm living my life, this is what I'm moving toward. I've decided that. That's not changing every day based on how I feel in the moment.
Mhm.
Then the moment to moment decisions are actually choices that are all aligned with the decision you already made.
They should be aligned, and that's where people the struggle.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
because we get into the temptation, and this is what hit me the other day is because this is something that I hear people say all the time, and I've said it, is when when something is tempting you, when you look at something like I had, the issue the other day. I'm at my family's, they got cheesecake out there. I'm like, oh man, the cheesecake looks good, you
It's
know,
all well and good until something
right?
in front of your
And
face.
the yeah, and the choice was not, do you really want that? That wasn't the question, right? Because if the answer is yeah, I really want that. So if that's what I'm going to go off of, then yeah, do I really want it? Sure, I really want it, so I'm going to have it. That's not the question. The question is, does eating this cheesecake support the decision that I've already made?
Yes.
I've already decided that I'm trying to get to X, Y, or Z goal. I'm trying to improve my health. I'm trying to get to a certain level of body fat. I'm trying to build muscle. I'm trying to do this experiment. If I eat this cheesecake, is that going to help me do that or not? And the answer is no, it's not going to. So then, okay, well, it's in front of my face. If I do this, I'm not supporting the decision I've already made. So I know if I do it, I'm going back on my word. to myself,
Yes.
right? Then I can't now there's a whole nother discussion we could talk about building trust in yourself,
And
right?
integrity. Yes,
Self
exactly.
integrity and honoring your own word. If your
Yep.
own word doesn't mean anything to yourself, then that's a whole, we got
Oh my
some
gosh, we have
therapy,
so many
therapy
topics
we had to
because
get
yes,
to.
as you're speaking, I was thinking, okay, let's take this one step further and say never use the word try or
Yeah.
trying. Because if you're trying, you've already planned to fail.
Yep. Yeah.
You've already said, I don't really believe I can do this, or I'm not really fully committed to doing this. So I'm going to say I'm going to try. It's like when you invite somebody over or you invite somebody to an event and they're like, okay, I'm going to try to make it. You already know they're not coming. They're
Yep.
not coming.
Yeah.
If they were going to come, they would say, I'll be there.
Right.
Great. Thanks. Confirmed. RSVP. Yes. So RSVP yes to yourself. And
Yep.
so, okay, now let's talk about the piggy bank and
Yes.
how we
Piggy
got on
bank.
that topic. So, okay.
That
So
was
we were
that was
talking,
your phrase, by the way. You said piggy bank.
yes, the piggy bank was my jam because, all right, I've heard this a million times and it used to drive me crazy. When I first lost weight on paleo, before I even went keto, before I ever started lifting, um, I just got skinny, like skinny fat. Let's say I went from fat to skinny fat, like before anything changed fitness wise. But I would be out and eating a certain way, and everybody, first of all, would be looking at what I'm choosing. Like then it started to become like, oh, what's Natalie gonna eat? And then maybe I'll base my decision off that. But at first they would all watch me order and then they'd be like, oh, you can afford it. Oh, get the such and such, you can afford it. And it used to drive me crazy because I wanted to say to them, I've put in a lot of work to get to where I am.
Yeah.
And if I could afford it, I wouldn't even look the way I look right now. So what you're seeing and what you're thinking I can afford, I had to work really hard to get to. So
Mhm.
no, I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford it all these years and I still can't afford it. So that used to
Right.
drive me insane hearing that. But I loved how somehow we got on this and I'm like, oh my gosh, that actually makes a lot of sense because when you're starting from a net negative, let's say, right? We comparing health to finances,
Yeah.
right? So let's say you're in debt up to your eyeballs and you're still charging material items every day on your cards that are already overdrawn and you're battling to get out of this pile of debt but at the same time you just keep piling more and more debt on, right? Versus you have a person who is out of debt, has investments, has a retirement account or investment accounts and their money's making money
Yeah.
and now they have dividends that they're receiving or interest that they're receiving on their money. And now they have this extra money that they could go and spend the interest and their money will keep making money for them.
Mhm.
So that's the difference between being in this state of optimal or peak health where you have all these dividends coming in that you can work with
Yep.
versus you're in debt or even you're at break even and you don't have the extra to work with in terms
Yeah.
of your health. So
Yeah.
comparing your health to money, this is where the piggy bank came in, right? I was like, okay, every time that you are saying not today or I'll start tomorrow or I started and I had 2 good days and now I need a cheat meal or I've earned it because I had a good week. But you're
Or I had a
like,
good workout. I worked out so I can afford. Oh my God.
you're like a month in or a couple weeks in,
Yeah.
or even if you're 6 months in, but you've been doing this consistently. You've been dipping into the cookie jar. In other words, dipping into the piggy bank.
Piggy bank of
Every
health.
time you put every time you put a quarter in, you're taking two out.
Yeah.
Piggy bank is going to be negative because and you're wondering why you're not making progress. And then and then it discourages you because you're not
Right.
making progress and
Right.
it's like, well, I'm not making progress, this isn't working anyway, I might as well quit.
Yeah. That's actually a good point. Like the message here's the reality, guys. Anybody, if you're listening to this, here's the reality. Okay. And this is what we're talking about. The further you are in debt, the more deliberate you have to be about everything, every decision that you make in order to get out of debt. Until you are out of debt, until you are at a point financially where you can afford to do things, you can't afford to do those things. Like it's one of those things. Like, you know, I'm at a point when I first started 10 years ago, when I was almost 250 pounds, I was 240 pounds plus. There's no way I could even think about doing what I'm doing now. Okay. It's taken me 10 years from a physical perspective, from a mental perspective, from learning about nutrition, learning about how to get in shape, learning about metabolic health and all those things. It's taken me that long to get to a point where now I can, I'm playing. This experiment I'm doing to my body right now is me playing around, because health wise, metabolically, I can afford to do that because I put in that time. I've gotten to the point where I have the dividends, I have the results, and my body can adjust and be flexible with what I'm doing. If you're not there yet,
Okay.
yeah,
I gotta holler at my yo-yo dieters
yeah,
and those who are battling against metabolic distress. So
mhm,
you're unhealthy metabolically. You're dealing with insulin resistance. You're dealing with prediabetes. You're dealing with women. You're dealing with PCOS. You're dealing with these issues, these bigger issues that make it very difficult for you to lose weight. And you're on this weight loss journey and you're hitting your head up against the wall because you can't go low enough in your calories to make it
yeah.
continue. Like
Starving myself.
here's the long and short of it, right? And this is what competitors do, whatever it takes. Now, some people competing who were not healthy to begin with got themselves into a very, very difficult health, unhealthy place after a
Mhm.
show because they just had to do it. And
Yeah, well,
they were like,
physically and mentally, right? Yeah.
I'm going to do this no matter what. Right. So the fact is, for those who are battling against all of these metabolic conditions, yes, you can diet enough to lose the weight. Even with all your conditions, you can go extreme and you will have to starve yourself to get there. Sure, you can get there, but you're going to make your health a million times worse than it already is to get there. And
Hmm.
you're going to be miserable to do it.
Hmm.
Or you can take the time to focus on your health. You can improve all of those markers. And then when you get frustrated by the fitness models that are talking about how easy it is to eat healthy and to drop weight. And so if anybody has been thinking this way about Coach Bronson as he's been like sharing about how strict he's been and it seems easy to you and you get frustrated by that, the fact is once you take care of your health, it is a lot easier.
Yeah.
Every time I decide to do a cut, the weight just drops off. But I guarantee you, had I tried to do that 10 years ago, no freaking way.
Well,
No
and
way.
then, right, then we talk about habits, right? So this is a 10-year journey for me, a little over 10 years. So I've developed the habit. So all I'm doing is repeating a cycle to reach a goal that I've repeated several times already. So the more you do a thing, the more it becomes easy to repeat it. And that's what I'm talking about. So for anybody that's in a health deficit, anybody that's in debt from a health perspective, the more times you can put money into that piggy bank, the easier it becomes to put more money in that piggy bank. The more times you take money out of the piggy bank, the easier it becomes to take money out of the piggy bank. So which of those habits, which of those actions do you want to get better at doing? And that's kind of the question. What I wanted to talk about is you had said something about getting frustrated, right? If you keep dipping into that piggy bank and you're not seeing progress, you get frustrated.
Yeah.
A lot of people are also frustrated with having to be strict all the time. And
Yeah.
that's what that, it's okay. It's like, does this ever end is the question. And I know I felt that, right? It's been
Yeah.
10, like, again, it's been 10 years. I know even now I'm going through this thing. So I started in October and I'm doing this experiment through May, right? So October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, 8 months. Good Lord, that seems like a long time. 8 months I'm doing this experiment because I'm trying to get to a certain point by May. Now I may get there before, I may get there after, I probably will get there before. The way things are going, I may get there in like March. Who knows? But 8 months is a long time. So for me to have to maintain a very strict, very deliberate plan and stay on plan for that time. I'm 2 months in and I'm already like, man, I got 6 more months to go. Like, this is going to be interesting. We talked the other day and you made a joke about how we're getting to the point in my macros where it's starting to feel like, okay, I'm starting to be like, I'm going to be hungry this week. Like there's that
Yep.
mental game of having to stay on track. And even though I'm eating less than I'm used to eating and I may feel hungry, I got to stick to it and remember why I'm doing this, what I'm doing. So it's not always easy. And the frustration of feeling like you have to be on all the time can
Yeah.
be stressful and can be kind of just as discouraging as going off sometimes and not seeing progress. The
Yeah.
question is, which level of stress, which level of I don't even know if discouragement is the right word. Which of those would you rather deal with? Would you rather deal with being strict and taking the mental effort to stay on plan and see the progress? Or would you rather be enjoying things in the moment and never making progress?
I mean, the fact is, for the most part, most of us lived our entire lives in the latter.
Yeah.
Most of us lived our entire lives living for the moment. And that's what got us to where we were when we started our journey. And why we
Right.
were trying to do this in the first place. So and it requires a shift because this is where that question comes in. If you've always done, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always
Right.
gotten. So if you
Right.
want something different, you're going to have to do something different. So I mean, here's a question, right? What can you do? What do you put in place to make sure you see the marathon through? Because for most people, it's not going to be a sprint,
Mhm.
right? It's going to be, and you're going to have to sprint for periods of time to keep you on this marathon,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, just some practical things, right? So, for one, what I highly recommend is getting very honest with yourself about what you're doing consistently and what you're doing sporadically. So,
Yeah.
for instance, Christmas was yesterday, right? Like, Bronson was joking with me, like, oh, careful about these habits, because I stayed up super late watching movies with the family last night. I'm like, it's Christmas, right? It's cool to do that on Christmas. But if you're doing that 5 days a week, every single week, and you're wondering why you're exhausted every day and you can't get to sleep and you can't wake up in the morning, it's probably because you're up late 75% of the time.
Yeah.
So there tends to be a disconnect for those on their health journey of how consistent they're being with their chosen way of life, which I
Mhm.
like to use instead of diet,
Yeah.
or their chosen way of eating. We tend to forget the moments of being off plan, forget how we're not tracking how often we're doing that,
Mhm.
right? So first and foremost, I would say, and I have a 5-6 year note on my phone, like
Hey, what's
the
that picture on there?
might, might be a
Hey,
couple
who's that? What is that all about?
people in Vegas, couple of really cool coaches in Vegas. So I gotta show y'all this because it now is titled Life Prep Journal. I used to call it my comp prep journal. But this is my life prep journal. And this has been, probably can't see it because of the
Yeah, we got
glare.
it. Yeah, it's just showing it pretty good.
Yeah. So what it says at the top is, who am I? How will I show up today? And then I have a scripture: walk in a manner worthy of the call you have received. And it's just something that reminds me of like who I am and what I chose for my
Mhm.
life. And then I have my little purpose, which is essentially like the goals that I'm working on right now. I change those, as time goes. But the purpose that I have here is like the long-term vision of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it says,
Right.
honor God in my body, treat my body as a vessel of the Holy Spirit. So I'm not putting garbage into a garbage can. I'm honoring my body. Show up as my best self in my best body. And what does that mean? Optimal health, strength, confidence, vibrancy, energy, self-discipline, control, and leadership. And
Mhm.
these are all things that are connected to my identity. And then I have a daily journal, and this daily journal it's 6 years long. I mean, there have been stretches where I wasn't exactly the topic we're talking about right now, where I wasn't tracking everything as closely, and I said, okay, I'm going to give myself a break, and I'm not going to be tracking things or writing things down. But I go through sprints,
Yeah.
seasons where it is okay, I'm going to track everything, and I just write down a little daily log. And it's just like, if you've ever worked with a coach and you've used an app, like if you're working with Coach Bronson and you use the app and you're tracking your weights, or you're tracking, your lifts or things like that, or if you worked with a nutrition coach or a prep coach or anything like that, usually you're working in some sort of database where you're submitting weekly check-ins, and you're
Mhm.
you're putting your weight and maybe your body composition and your macros or
Progress
things like that.
pictures or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've noted I have my own little notes because I like to keep everything for me. And so I have my own little notes, my daily like weight, body composition, macros. Sometimes I'll
Yeah.
track steps, all kinds of things. But the key here is the thing I'm getting at. You could just use your calendar. You can use like a wall calendar and just check off every day that you followed your chosen way of eating completely. And I mean 100%. I would be really curious. And I feel that this is non-judgmental because everything I'm saying is because I know it because I've been there. So let me just say, like, I get
Hi.
it.
Yeah.
Hi. My name is Natalie and I'm a food addict. Like, so the fact is we think we're being so on point and so quote unquote good, which I hate.
Mhm.
I hate that as well. Putting morality on who you are based on what you're doing with your diet. But the days were good and the days were bad. And if you're not tracking it, you have no idea how consistent you're being, because we can forget that so fleetingly.
Yeah.
So even just marking on a calendar which days you were 100% on, and then you can do things like, okay, every month I'm going to have one day where I get to go out for a cheeseburger or french fries or whatever it might be, ice cream. Ask Bronson what he likes to do every so often. The
Not for the
fact
next
is,
8 months.
you get to you're an adult, we're all adults, right? Nobody's making all of our food for us, and we don't get any choice about what we're doing here.
Yep.
So the fact is you can look at your life over a 6 month period, or in Bronson's case 8 months, and say, okay, here's my long-term plan, here's how I'm going to do it day to day. And well, if you're working with a coach, I mean, with Bronson, it's going to be Rob, and Rob might tell him. A lot of time, coaches with competition clients will say, "Go out and have a cheat meal. You go out and eat whatever you want. You don't know when it's coming. They're going to tell you based on honesty, transparency, and consistency. If you're telling your coach and you're being 100% honest, and the coach is seeing what's happening with you, and they're like, ooh, this person needs a spike in calories right now because they've been hella consistent over 12 weeks and they haven't deviated,
Mhm.
and their body just needs a break. I'm going to give them one. Most of us cannot emotionally, psychologically, and even physiologically decide on those things for ourselves when we're on a journey. So a
Yeah.
lot of the time we need that guidance of a coach to be able to tell us when we can loosen the reins a little bit.
Yeah. And that doesn't always mean that it's got to be, the food choices have to be necessarily unhealthy. Right. So
Right.
there's a lot of aspects that go into that, from understanding what your body needs, understanding what you can handle psychologically and mentally.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah, because we're not even getting into all that, the
yeah,
emotional.
right. Yeah. So
That's
I,
another thing altogether. But ultimately, what it comes down to is if you are consistent more than you're not consistent,
there you go.
and you are consistent, and not just a little bit more, not just like 51%. We're talking like 90%, like 95, like 99%. Then yes, you can afford to take a quarter or two out of that piggy bank every so often. But it's going to be after you've put $10, $20, $50 in there. Now you can take out a quarter or two. Not every time you put in $1, you can take a quarter,
Yeah.
because now 25% of the time, you're now keeping yourself from getting to where you're trying to go. If your kids couldn't eat, would you go out and buy a Michael Kors bag? I hope not.
Right. Absolutely. And that's where a lot of people are right now with their health. They're struggling with, I really want to go shopping for new clothes or new shoes or a computer or a TV or a new car or whatever. And they've got kids at home who aren't eating, and they're $200,000 in debt or
Yep. So
whatever it may be, right?
it's
But it's
weighing the
talking about with
day-to-day
their health,
choices.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
weighing the day-to-day choices against the previously set decision.
Yeah.
And this is why it really helps to have an accountability partner.
Mhm.
Because think about it. I mean, you think about couples who are in debt, who are working together on getting out of debt, right?
Yeah.
One of the spouses cannot go and make a major high ticket purchase without discussing that with the other spouse, because they've made a decision and a commitment together to
Right.
work toward a greater goal. This is why community and accountability are so key,
Yeah.
because
And
when
it's
you
also,
you can go to that community or that accountability partner and say, hey, I'm really wanting XYZ in this moment, but I made this decision or this commitment ahead of
Mhm.
time. Help me through this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to have someone that's going to help you stay in check, because we all fall for and this is another aspect that I'm thinking about how it translates from health to money, is sales, right? Oh, well, I only got this because I saved $50. Well, if you hadn't got it at all, you would have saved maybe $100. Just because it was $50 off doesn't mean you had to spend the other $50 to get like it. Like,
Oh my
so it's the
gosh.
same with tweaks and hacks and all these other biohacks and things like that, right? Like, just stick with the basics of saving your money. Every chance you get to save money, save money. It doesn't need to be a quick thing. Don't look for sales. Don't look for cheats. Just because it says keto doesn't mean it's actually benefiting you. There's
Oh,
a big difference between something that is healthy and something that is keto.
oh my gosh.
There is a
Hello.
big difference between something that is healthy and something that is keto.
Stay away from the lilies, guys.
Yeah.
Just
Should I say that one more time, or do you think I got it? Right. So stop looking for sales on your health journey.
yeah.
They don't
Ooh,
exist.
that's a great soundbite
Just
right there.
save your money and save your health and do what you can to put money in that piggy bank.
Ooh, I have a really great practical takeaway.
Yeah.
Okay. Something you can do, like a strategy you can use, um, that I like to use with my clients. So anticipate, right?
Okay.
Anticipation of the challenges that are coming, so that you can get ahead of it. My
Mhm.
favorite phrase, get ahead
Yes,
of it.
absolutely. Get ahead of it.
So, for instance, right? Um, Getting really aware of your mental chatter.
Mm,
So, before you end up in a situation where there's temptation, we all know it's going to happen, right? We have to take the blinders off and not think, okay, now that I'm embarking on my keto journey, I'm never going to come across a
never
sugar
get tempted
cookie
again.
again.
Yeah.
It's going to be so easy. There's never going to be temptation. Okay. We may not know when the temptation will show up in front of us. Like, somebody may bring a surprise thing to work, or somebody might get you a candy gift. I mean, I know that happens to me every holiday. So I can anticipate that as many times as I tell my loved ones not to get me candy or cake, they're going to do
Always
it
did
because
something.
they feel better to give that to me.
Right.
10 freaking years, y'all, and people are still doing that. Okay. So don't expect the people around you to change because you've made this decision.
Right. No,
You
that's, oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? You have to change the way you respond to them too. And then maybe you'll have a chance of them doing something different for you in the future. But you have to be consistent with your response to them too. If you're constantly waffling and going back and they're going to keep doing the things they're doing. That's a whole
Yeah.
nother topic for another
That's a
day.
whole other,
But
yes.
okay, getting in touch with the things that is going to be going on between your ears when the temptation arises. So this is what I like to have people do. Brainstorm. What are all of the excuses my mind is going to come up with? And you can take the defenses out because this is not you, this is your mind. Your mind is doing this. You're not your mind. You're not your thoughts. But what are the thoughts that are going to come up in that moment that are going to try to convince you to eat the thing? At first, if you've never done this exercise before, you're not going to have a clue. It's going to be like mind blank. I don't know. I just want to eat the thing when it comes up.
I just want to eat it.
Like, I don't know what I'm thinking. I don't know what thoughts come up. But if you make the effort to try to brainstorm these things or become curious about these things, then I guarantee you the next time the temptation comes up, if you can trigger yourself to think, wait, okay, that's right. I was going to try to identify what those thoughts were. When you're in the moment, all of a sudden you're going to start recognizing thoughts that you never heard before in your head. Like, oh, it's just this one. You can have just one.
Right.
Or start again tomorrow.
You can
or
afford it.
It's a special occasion, or you can afford it, or you've been good this week. All of a sudden, like all these thoughts flood in. Write them all down. Write them all down on a piece of paper. And then on the back of the paper, flip it over and write your response to every single one of those arguments. Just like, and hey, anybody who's in sales or who has ever been in sales, what did you have to learn how to do? You had to learn how to overcome objections. So your mind is objecting to the decision you previously made to be healthy. Yep. Your mind has all these objections. It's going to come up with all these objections. How are you going to overcome those objections in the moment? If you don't prepare yourself ahead of time, you will cave into those thoughts every single time.
Yeah, you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan.
So
you have to, like,
what statements am I going to actually say back to my mind when it's saying these things to me? Mm-hmm. And then employ them. Challenge, even better than a statement would be a question. Because when you ask your brain a question, it gets busy trying to answer it. So when your brain says, oh, it's just this one, you can start fresh tomorrow. Ask your brain, oh, really? Is it really only going to be one though? Right.
Do I really want to start tomorrow?
How many times in my past have I then gotten back on track tomorrow and really did what I said I was going to do? Mm-hmm. Now your brain has to think, how many times? Oh, well, I never do, because every single time tomorrow I do the same thing.
Yeah. 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 That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I think we could probably talk about tools and practical things and stuff that people can do. We're going to have a lot more of these videos, and I'm sure we'll be talking about more of that stuff. But I think the point is, just to kind of bring this all together, is we know it's hard. No one is saying that it's easy. There are practical things that you can do to help you stay in touch with your why. I really like what you're talking about with your journal and having that stuff that you look at. I have something that I look at that's very similar, that I look at every morning, and I read it, say it out loud. It helps me daily stay in touch with who I want to be, where I'm trying to go, the kind of person I want to be, which then frames the actions that I'm taking throughout the day, because I have that picture of who I want to be. This is the picture of who I want to be today. If I do this, then that's not who that's not who I am. So I can't do that. I need to do this instead. So I highly recommend, guys, if you've never heard of that concept of having an identity and taking some time and being introspective to say, hey, who do I want to be? What kind of a life do I want to have? What kind of a person do I want to be? How do I want people to feel around me? How do I want to impact other people? What are the things that I want to use as descriptors or characteristics of me if someone were to describe me? Right? Those are things to think about. Write them down. And then every morning, right, just read them to yourself. It takes 2 minutes. It's not a big thing, right? Just read it to yourself every morning. And then you can say, hey, that's going to be in your head through the rest of the day. The decisions I'm making from there.
Choice in the moment then gets framed by, is this helping me become this person?
Right.
Or is this keeping me in the past,
Yeah.
stuck in who I used to be?
Absolutely. And that will help you make those choices. I love the distinction between decisions and choices. I got to start using choices instead of decisions. That will help you make those choices day to day throughout the day. That will help you lead you in the direction you want to go. We know it's not easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't be here. I mean, if it was easy, we wouldn't have a story to tell, right? And you wouldn't have a story to tell. And so you going through your journey, you going through your story is impactful on not just you, but other people around you. So just keep that in mind as well, that you are setting an example for other people. That can be a motivation in and of itself. You know, I know for me as a coach, being in the position I'm in motivates me to make better choices for myself because I know other people are watching me.
100%.
Right. So
when I became a coach, my why changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So I still have my why, but I also have a bigger why because now I want to set an example for other people.
And it's like all parents and grandparents, right?
That's where I was just going to go. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, go for it. Yeah, you take it. Take it and run, Natalie. Take it.
I mean, I can't tell you how many clients like this is their why. It's not about them anymore. It's about being there, being a good example to their children and their grandchildren. And when they get to the point where they have grandchildren, it's being there with their grandchildren to be able to see their grandchildren grow up and to be able to play with them on the floor and to be able to be mobile and be healthy and be vibrant and be present in these people's lives. And while I mentioned the presence thing, it's just another thought around the holidays is we talk about, you know, food becomes such a focus of the holidays, but when we're so focused on the food, we can't be present with the people. And what the holidays are really about is about that presence with others, the people that we love. So put the focus where it belongs, put it on the people and not on the food and the, you know, internal dialogue of what you're eating and what you're not eating. And you can really ruin memories that way and lose out on a beautiful holiday experience when it's all about the food.
Yeah. Here's just a question to ask and something to be introspective about when you have that time, because I'm going to assume that after listening to this, everyone's going to start taking time every day to be with themselves and do some introspection. Are you more excited for the food at your family gathering than you are the people you're going to be spending time with? It's a question to ask because I know there's a lot of people out there that are that have more anxiety or anticipation about what food is going to be there than their family. And spending time with the people that they have blood relations with, right? And that they've, you know, this is your family, guys. So just something to think about. The people that are important to your life, do they know that they're important? How do you show them that they're important? Or are you more worried about what you're going to eat when you go over there? So something to think about. Something to think about.
And
that's all. Go ahead.
Just to end off, like, here's another great little tip. Why don't you get a piggy bank and put it somewhere every day?
I like it.
And then every time you pass by that piggy bank, the question is, did I add to my piggy bank today or did I take from it?
You know what we should do? We should see if there's a way to get a custom printed piggy bank with Fix My Keto on it.
Up.
And then we could, like, I don't know, it could be like a $4.99 for $4.99. Get this piggy bank that says Fix My Keto on the side of it, and then people could have a little piggy bank.
I love it because the pig also signifies bacon, which is so near and dear to our heart.
I love it. Very much so. Very much so. Ooh, I like that. So this is unofficially a segment that we're going to be doing. So Fix My Keto is a thing. In case you haven't noticed, we got our own thumbnail and like a little graphic and everything. Keep an eye out, guys. Both of us are very, very passionate about helping people with a lot of different aspects. I do a lot of fitness stuff. Nat does a lot of nutrition stuff. we're both in the keto space because we think it's pretty much the best combination of all of the things. And we want to help you improve your keto, improve your nutrition, find a way to make it work for you. We totally get that, you know, everyone is at a different place. Everyone needs to do things differently. But there are still, I guess, what would you call it? Parameters. There's still an umbrella of what where everyone needs to be. And we want to figure out how to help you find where you fit in that umbrella.
Absolutely. I mean, your strict is going to be different from somebody else's strict.
Yeah.
But identifying what the strict is that you need to take you to where you're trying to go, and then holding yourself accountable to that, that's what we're talking about here. When
And
we
then
say,
understanding when to change and what to modify and tweak, and how as you change, the things you do need to change. So we need to keep aware of that and help you progress through that whole thing too. So this is awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
thank you all for showing up.
And we'll see you guys the next time Fix My Keto comes around.